Have you ever assumed you knew what someone else was thinking and then acted on that assumption, only to realize you were wrong? Or expected someone to understand what you needed without telling them? If so, you're not alone. These are common thinking errors that contribute to anxiety, conflict, and disappointment. Welcome back to Quieting Anxiety. I'm Dr. Monica Frank with Excel at Life. Today we're exploring the cognitive distortion known as mind reading, the belief that we know what others are thinking or that others should know what we are thinking. This mental habit can easily feed anxiety and strain relationships. Let's begin by taking a moment to settle in. Take a slow, easy breath in and let it go. Now imagine you're standing in a quiet field just before sunrise. A soft fog surrounds you, thick enough to blur the edges of things, but light enough that you sense the world beyond it. This fog is like the assumptions your mind makes, the thoughts you take as fact without knowing for sure. As you listen today, see if you can let that fog begin to lift, not by pushing it away, but simply by being present, curious, and open to the possibility that there's more to see than what the mind assumes. Take one more breath, and let's begin. Let's start with a light example. I catch myself mind reading even with my cats. For instance, in the morning I might think, beef doesn't sound appetizing, so I'll give them the chicken. But what does my preference have to do with what my cats want? Nothing. Or consider how pet food is marketed. Chicken with carrots and gravy. It sounds good to the human, not the cat. This kind of projection is harmless when it comes to pets, but the same tendency can be problematic when applied to other people. Parents do it too. A mother who feels cold might tell her child, "Put on a coat," assuming the child feels the same way. The child protests and the mother replies, "Don't argue with me, just put on a coat." Again, this is a projection of internal experience, assuming others feel what we feel. While these examples are benign, problems arise when we act on assumptions about others' thoughts and feelings, especially when we're wrong. For instance, someone might say, "I know you think my idea is stupid," or "You'd rather be with her than with me," without any actual evidence. These accusations often reflect the speaker's own insecurity rather than the other person's intent. In cognitive therapy, we call this the mind reading error, making assumptions about someone else's thoughts or feelings based on our own internal state. So how does this impact anxiety? When you mind read, you're constantly evaluating social interactions through a lens of assumed judgment. You might think, "She thinks I'm annoying," or "He probably doesn't like me." These unspoken assumptions trigger anxiety because they activate the same internal alarm as real criticism would, except you have no proof. Your body reacts to imagined judgment with tension, worry, and avoidance. Over time, this can increase social anxiety, make communication more difficult, and reinforce the belief that you don't belong or are being negatively evaluated. Even in close relationships, mind reading can create emotional distance. When you assume someone's thoughts are negative or dismissive, you may become defensive, withdrawn, or resentful. This reinforces anxiety about connection and rejection. And instead of seeking reassurance through communication, You rely on assumptions that often make things worse. This thinking error becomes especially toxic when it fuels anxiety, when you worry that others are judging you, disapproving of you, are thinking the worst, even when there's no objective evidence. Often what you project onto others are your own self-critical thoughts. If you're harsh on yourself, you may assume others are judging you just as harshly. If you feel unworthy, you may assume others view you as inadequate. Part of becoming a psychologist involves learning to base assessments on evidence, not projection, not assumptions. I had to learn to catch my own biases and truly listen to my clients, not fill in the blanks with assumptions. The same skill can benefit personal relationships. The more you understand your own emotional reactions, the more accurately you can interpret others' behavior. Another side of this issue is expecting others to read your mind. This often leads to disappointment or resentment. You want someone to do something to comfort you, notice your distress, or know what you need, but you don't tell them. Instead, you expect them to just know. This type of thinking is related to another cognitive error, should thinking. In this case, the person believes the other should understand their needs without explanation. For example, he should have canceled his meeting. He could see I was upset. But did you ask? Did you say what you needed? We all grow up in different families, cultures, and emotional environments. What one person sees as obvious, another might completely miss. If you grew up in a family where being upset meant you wanted space, and your partner grew up in a family where being upset meant you needed comfort, how would your partner know which response you expect? Unless you tell them. Misunderstandings happen when we assume others should think and act the way we do. And when they don't, we may feel rejected or even hurt, when in fact, there may have been no bad intention at all. Let me give you an example. A woman wants to connect romantically with her husband, but does so subtly. Maybe while he's watching football. She believes her signals are clear, but he doesn't respond. She feels rejected. In reality, he was just focused on the game and missed the cues. The problem wasn't lack of interest, it was lack of clear communication. We also tend to misinterpret nonverbal behavior based on our own insecurities. For instance, you're in a conversation and the other person looks away. You think, she must find me boring. But maybe she's looking for someone, or distracted, or shy, or, well, the possibilities are endless. The point is, your interpretation may not be accurate. A good way to challenge mind reading is to come up with at least one alternative explanation. If you can imagine even one plausible reason for the person's behavior that doesn't involve judgment or rejection, you already weaken the assumption. I once worked with a client to brainstorm every possible reason someone might have behaved a certain way. We filled an entire whiteboard. Afterward, he could see that his original assumption was only one of many possibilities, and perhaps not even the most likely. So how do you challenge the mind-reading error? First, recognize the assumption. The first step is noticing when you are assuming rather than observing. Even if you've told someone something before, don't assume they remember or understood it the way you intended. For example, I told her I was a vegetarian, but there was beef broth in that dish. Once you understand you are making an assumption, consider alternatives. Ask yourself, what else could explain this behavior? Try to brainstorm multiple possible explanations. This helps loosen the grip of the initial assumption. Then you can remind yourself you might be wrong. Repetition is important here. Tell yourself, I'm guessing, I don't actually know. The only way to know for sure is to ask. Finally, and we will discuss this in detail in a few episodes from now, use a cognitive diary. But for right now, write down situations where you're mind reading, describe what you assumed, explore other possible explanations, and reflect on how the situation played out. This helps clarify the pattern and build awareness over time. As you move through this week, notice when your thoughts drift toward assumptions. Are you deciding what someone else thinks? Are you hoping they'll read your mind? When you catch those moments, pause, breathe, ask yourself, do I know this or am I guessing? So let's end by taking a moment now to breathe. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly. As we close today's episode, return for a moment to that quiet field. The fog that once surrounded you is beginning to clear. You see more now, not just with your eyes, but with awareness. The trees, the path, the sky gently brightening with morning light. This is what happens when you soften assumptions. The world becomes more visible. Connection becomes easier. You don't have to know what others are thinking. You don't have to expect them to read your mind. You can choose to ask, to clarify, to stay open. And you can trust that the more you do, the more the fog will lift. And to help you go deeper with this practice, listen to the companion audio, Letting Go of Assumptions, to reinforce what we discussed today. Until next time, keep practicing, keep breathing, and keep moving forward.